The fourth aspect of achieving best grain protection is undertaking or following best practice application. And essentially that is making sure that when we're executing the treatment process that we're doing it right. So we mix it up right, we apply it right. So this is the doing part of grain protection. Fundamentally, we can't treat or store wet grain. So if that load is too wet to deliver to a receival site, then don't store it on farm, because that will lead to issues down the road. If you're treating wet grain, the moisture elevates or increases the rate of degradation of the active ingredients, which will result in a poorer period of control. It's always in the wet spot of sheds or the silo that's got the leak that you'll have that hot spot of infestation. So part of your pre-site checkup is make sure you seal up silos, and fundamentally don't treat wet grain. As employers, we're going to make sure that our staff undertake all protective measures to make sure we keep them safe. Wearing personal protective equipment or PPE is fundamental with any insecticide application, and we recommend that you follow this. As you can see here, I've got the overalls on, I've got my rubber boots on, I've got my green nitriles, I've got my respirator, and the respirator canister, make sure you change that every year, and between uses store it away, put it back into its carton so it's not getting dust and being exposed to other potential chemicals. And finally, your face mask, whilst it does seem clumsy, is really important for spills and splashes, so you want to avoid that in contact with your face. So importantly, stay safe, wear your PPE. Reading the label correctly is paramount to following the label directions, and the label directions are critical in terms of following what commodities the different products can treat. As we know, Conserve Plus treats all cereal grains, but if we're going to partner it with Reldam, we've got to make sure that we don't treat rice, malt barley or maize. So in the instance here, we're going to be mixing up a load to treat some wheat that's going to go to a local feed mill, and both these actives are accepted by the marketer. In terms of the batch filling process, what we're going to be looking at here is if we fill up to about 40 litres, we only need to make 50 tonnes of treatment. We fill up to 40 litres of water. We have the agitation going. It's important to have the agitation going. We always shake the bottle first because it's suspension concentrate, and we've got to make sure that any material that might have settled is suspended. We shake that well, put it into the tank when it's agitating. Give that a minute or two to homogenise in the tank, so equalise and then we put in the Reldan. So it's a litre of Reldan per 50 litres of water. So this will treat 50 tonnes of grain. So agitate that, fill it up to the 50 litre mark, let it agitate, and then we're ready to spray. A key thing to remember is agitation between when you're treating and you might turn the pump off, waiting for the next load to come in from the paddock. What's really important there is when you pull up in your truck, switch on the pump, switch it on for a good 5 minutes before, just in case any of the material might have settled. So you want to make sure that every litre that remains in that tank is basically the same in terms of the concentration. So there is potential, if it sits for longer periods, that it may settle out. So it's really important to have good agitation, at least if the product's been sitting idle for some hours. What's really important about Conserve Plus is that you mix up enough solution to allow for 1 day's treatment. You can't let the solution sit for longer than 48 hours because the active ingredients start to degrade. So when you're looking at your batches, just look to make up a fresh batch every day if you can, and make sure you agitate it thoroughly before application. What we're targeting with this solution that we've made up 50 litres, and then we're targeting 1 litre of this solution per tonne of grain. So that is applied into an auger as it's being elevated, or what they call admixture applied. So we're adding it to the grain as it's being elevated and then cascades into the silo. All this is important for the mixing process, 1 litre of ton doesn't cover all kernels that are being treated. What is really important to know is that the insects move throughout the consignment of grain, and that's how they pick up the active ingredient dose. So what we're talking about is applying admixture via our nozzle onto the auger, and as we can see on this barrel here is the nozzle's located 2/3 the way down the barrel. This is because this barrel has a high lift to get into these very big silos. What you don't want to have is the treatment at the very bottom will create extra drag and affect the overall output of the auger. So this nozzle here is suitably located towards the end of the barrel, and it still has adequate time to mix in before it cascades out into the silo. The location of the spray nozzle is important to have closer to where it's coming out of the truck, literally for people being able to see if the nozzle's blocked or not. That is really the physical benefit of it. You can see how the spray nozzle pattern is going if it's into the receival. But if you want to have any further information about this, just check up our product control manual for Conserve Plus, which has some suggestions where to find this. What's important is that you don't use tube veyors or the conveyor belts which are commonly used with pulses to elevate, because we do get poorer coverage of the commodity, and we don't advocate the use of conserve treating grain that's being elevated into storages with tube veyors, so please avoid this. As with any chemical application, it's important to fill out post-application your spray application logbook, and importantly note the commodity that you treat with what products and at what rates. So that's important for referencing when you go to fill out your commodity vendor declaration later, and also for referencing back to as to if withholding periods apply for different mixing partners. So there's some of the key things that relate to best practice application.